welcome everyone. Thank you for being here. I know there's a lot going on. You could have lots of other things to do, so thanks for choosing to be here tonight. Thanks for bearing with us through the sound checks and sound difficulties this evening as well. Tonight we're concluding a three-part series called Do You Mind? And how many have caught the teaser videos we put on social media about that? Can we give Ryan and Jared a hand for So the main idea behind this message has been this question: what can we do to avoid or to step away from our natural reactions to stress? And for a lot of us, myself included, one of those reactions is impatience, and that's why we have that title, Do You Mind? So it's sometimes the attitude that comes out when we're stressed. In week one, we talked about renewing our minds. A lot of the short reactions that we have when we're stressed have to do with lies and temptations that reside in our heads. So in the first week, we talked about filling our minds regularly with God's truth, in order to renew our minds, in order to transform us, not just tweak things here and there. In week two, we talked about refreshing our minds. When there's a lot to do, a lot of times we don't get the refreshment that our bodies, our minds, and our spirits desperately need in order to be the loving people God calls us to be. And so last week we talked about ways we can pursue that rest and refreshment even during a busy season. So tonight we're looking ahead to the transitions that are quickly approaching. Change and uncertain futures can cause just as much stress as things like finance, sometimes even more. So tonight we're going to ask ourselves one more out loud question to address this. So say out loud, self. Self. Do you ready your mind? So changes, transitions, uncertainty, how can we prepare ourselves, how can we ready ourselves so that that's less stressful on us? We'll start by addressing some areas when there's a little more uncertainty and it's kind of open-ended, we don't know what's happening. But then we'll also address those transitions where we think we know where we're going and then something changes on us that we weren't ready for, we weren't expecting. How can we ready ourselves for that? All of us face changes in life, and this is a prime season for that. So this should apply to every one of us. So here's our theme verse and our big idea for tonight's message. It's Proverbs 21:5. Proverbs 21:5 says, "The plans of the diligent lead to profit, as surely as haste leads to poverty." Plans of the diligent leads to profit, as surely as haste leads to poverty. So what's this saying? It's saying if we make a plan and work toward that plan, chances are it will be to our advantage. There will be a profit, there will be a benefit there. But if we just try to wing everything and hope it magically works out, if we fail to plan, like the saying goes, we're planning to fail. So we'll be lacking, we'll have a deficiency. And the words in this proverb, profit and poverty, lead us to think in a business application of this proverb. But those Hebrew words aren't limited to a financial meaning. So we can apply this to all areas of our lives. So not just profit or poverty financially, but abundance or deficiency in our spiritual lives, in our relationships, in our physical or emotional health. So basically it's saying it's good to have a plan in multiple areas of our lives. That can alleviate a lot of stress simply to have a plan. So we're not just floating around in that anxiety of uncertainty. We'll have a direction. The plans of the diligent lead to profit, as surely as haste leads to poverty. Without those plans and goals, life is going to pass us by. And we'll make some stupid choices that might sabotage our future plans, simply because we weren't aiming at anything. And I have a friend who received a trust fund when he turned 25 years old. And it was, the amount was something like $25,000. And that could have been a down payment on a house. That could have been a really nice car. He could have put just some of it away for an engagement ring and honeymoon for down the road, hoping to get married someday. He could have invested it and got it ahead in a retirement plan. Could have donated a nice tithe out of it. So many good options that he could have invested in his future with that $25,000, but he had no plan for it. He had no vision for it, and he spent it all in a fairly short amount of time on experiences and novelty souvenirs. $25,000. And a few nice gifts for his family members. Had my friend received that money at an older, wiser age 35 instead of at 25, I'm sure he would have made some plans and used that money differently. And by that time he was married, and I'm sure his wife would have had some good input on where that money went. So the plans of the diligent lead to profit, but surely his haste leads to poverty. When we apply this to other areas of our lives, besides finances, do I plan for my long-term health? Or am I all about what's most enjoyable in the moment? Do I have any relationship goals that are based on growth and focused on serving the other person in the relationship? Or is it all about what I get out of a relationship? Do I have plans to grow spiritually? Or do I invest in my spiritual life only when it's convenient and I have time and I feel like it? And the plans of the diligent lead to profit in all areas of life. Surely his haste leads to poverty. Here's the catch though, and we all know this from experience, our plans don't always work out. And that can leave us even more stressed if I had a plan and failed. So how could that be? We're like, what? I thought this proverb said that the plans of the diligent lead to profit. That's a Bible promise, right? That's a guarantee, right? No, it's not a promise or a guarantee. It's a proverb. A proverb is a wise saying. It's an observation about life that is generally true. It's more like a rule of thumb than a guarantee. And as a rule of thumb, if we make plans and work diligently toward those plans, usually that's going to turn out well for us. Does that mean those plans are always going to turn out the way we wanted? Of course not. So it's good to have a plan, but those plans don't always work out. So how can we make the most of that? Is there anything that we can do to kind of up our percentage so they work out more often than not, so we can be better prepared for the future? So we're going to answer this question: how can I ready my mind for what's ahead? How can I ready my mind for what's ahead? There's 3 steps. First one is plan with prayer and counsel. Plan with prayer and counsel. Forming a good plan is good. Forming a plan is good. We can try to anticipate what will happen. We can do some research, put a plan together. But we can form a better plan if we do that with prayer and with counsel, advice from other people. Let's consider the prayer part of that first. Proverbs 16, verses 2 and 3. Says, all ways of a man are pure in his own eyes, but the Lord weighs the spirit. Commit your work to the Lord, and your plans will be established. So in verse 2 there it says, all the ways of a man are pure in his own eyes. So our natural tendency is to make a plan and then think, wow, that's a pretty great plan, whether it is or isn't, because it was our plan. So in verse 3, I don't think it's saying, make a plan and then ask God to bless it, especially in the context of verse 2. I think it's telling us to ask for God's direction on the front end, then form the plan. Ask Him for direction, ask Him to weigh our motives, and then start putting the plan together. And don't just pray about it on the front end. Keep praying about it. Keep committing that plan to the Lord. Matthew 7, verses 7 and 8, Jesus said, "Keep asking, and it will be given to you. Keep searching, and you will find. Keep knocking, and the door will be opened to you. For everyone who asks receives, the one who searches finds, and to the one who knocks, the door will be opened." A lot of us may be familiar with this passage, probably in a different translation. It's one of those very quotable passages. But we're probably used to the words ask, seek, knock in that present tense. But this translation of the Bible, the Holman Christian Standard Bible, or maybe just the Christian Standard Bible, I think they're kind of moving in that direction, is actually a better translation of the tense of this verb than like the NIV and the ESV Bibles. So don't just ask, keep asking, keep seeking, keep knocking. It's about persistence in prayer. At our spring banquet, we had one of our older alumni share his testimony of his time with his house. And his name was Matt Mitchell, and one of the things he shared that stood out in his experience was the prayer meetings that we had. And he came at year number 2 for us here at SVSU. It's year 20 now. And that school year, we started with about 25 people in his house. In his second year in his house, our third year, we had about 50 people. The year after that, we started with over 100 people. And I strongly believe the reason for that, during that, his second year or third year when we started with 50 people, close to half of those people showed up to weekly prayer meetings. Keep asking, keep seeking, keep knocking. God likes to move when we keep seeking Him, when we pray. Sometimes we pray at the front end of a plan, and a new idea pops in our head, and we're like, wow, that's great. I never would have thought of that, or I never would have had peace about that if I didn't pray about it. But sometimes it doesn't work that way, and sometimes God leaves the plan up to us, and or maybe we think we have a direction from God, and we're not really sure about that. So that's when counsel is especially helpful. Proverbs 15:22 says, "Plans fail for lack of counsel, but with many advisors they succeed." Proverbs 20:18, "Plans are established by counsel. By wise guidance, wage war." Wage war, you might think, Troy, have any wars to wage? That's probably a good thing, but don't just think about that physically, think about it spiritually. There's always wars to be waged spiritually. Satan and demons are real, they're against us, they can plant thoughts in our heads, and that's exactly why we can have a stupid idea and run with it and think it's the best thing since sliced bread. It's because of the way temptation works. We can have blind spots about things that feed into those temptations, or because of our experiences, we're just thinking a certain way. That's why it's good to run our plans by some godly people we trust. Plans fail for lack of counsel. When we have no one to tell us, hey, I love you, but that's a stupid plan. It's helpful when we have that. Plans are established by counsel. If we involve others, they can help us turn a good idea, a good plan, into a great plan. I run a lot of ideas for his house by a small handful of people, and they have been very helpful to help me turn good ideas into great ideas. And there's also been times when they're like, that's not a good idea, that's not going to work. And then they give me some reasons why that I didn't think about, and that's super beneficial to have counsel from other people. So can I ready my mind for what's ahead? I can do that by planning with prayer and counsel. What's the next step? Number 2 is take steps. Take steps toward that. The plans of the diligent lead to profit, and surely as haste leads to poverty. This is where the word diligent comes into play. A plan that we never implement isn't a very good plan. It doesn't do any good. It's basically the same as having no plan. Maybe a little worse, because at the end we knew we could have done something different, but we let that opportunity slip by us. And then we end up with regret and even more anxiety about that. 2 Corinthians 8:11 says, "Now finish the work, so that your eager willingness to do it may be matched by your completion of it, according to your means." Matthew 21, verses 28 through 31. Jesus told a little story. He said, "What do you think? A man had 2 sons. He went to the first and said, 'Son, go and work in the vineyard today.' And he answered, 'I will not.' But afterward he changed his mind and went. He went to the other son and said the same, and he answered, 'I go, sir,' but he did not go. Which of the 2 did the will of his father?" They said, "The first." Jesus said to them, "Truly I say to you, the tax collectors and the prostitutes go into the kingdom of God before you." It's not about having a good plan. It's not about starting a good plan. It's about following through on that plan and continuing to take steps with it. It's about the diligence in that plan. And if we make our goals and our steps specific and measurable, then we're going to know whether we're making progress or whether we just talk a good game at the beginning. So, if you have a goal of growing spiritually this summer, that's good. Maybe your goal is, I want to get along better with family this summer. I'm going to get a summer job doing such and such. I'm going to be more involved with his house next year. I'm going to be in a relationship with this person. I'm going to stop this sinful habit or this unhealthy habit. I'm going to heal and become emotionally whole. I'm going to raise $1,000 for Cycle to Campus. So I'm going to tackle this big project. Great, those are all wonderful goals. But they don't automatically happen just because it's a good plan, just because it's a good idea. We have to ask ourselves, what are specific steps that I need to take to get from here to there, where the goal is? And we need to start, and we need to take the steps and follow through on that. But sometimes even with prayer, even with advice from others, even though we're taking steps along the way, our plans still don't always work out. Or maybe something changes that we weren't expecting, and how can we prepare for that? So, number 3, hold that plan loosely. Hold that plan loosely. That's especially difficult for those of us who are control freaks. Some of us love to plan. We take number 1 and we get out our color code system and we're like, yeah, I'm ready to go. Let's plan. And then, number 2 might be a little more challenging, but there's those of us who like check marks on our list. And so we're like, I'm going to take a step so I can check it off. And I'm going to take another step so I can check it off. And we're going to work through that. And now we hear that we're supposed to hold on to that plan loosely, but we're like white-knuckled grip on our planner. If we try to control that plan and micromanage it, we're going to have big-time anxiety if it doesn't work out perfectly. So we have to learn to hold that plan loosely. Because the simple reality is this: we cannot control everything. That's an obvious thing, but sometimes we need to hear ourselves say that to ourselves. We cannot control everything. Ecclesiastes 9, verse 11, King Solomon, the wisest man, made this observation. He said, "Again, I saw under the sun, the race is not to the swift, nor the battle to the strong, nor bread to the wise, nor riches to the intelligent, nor favor to those with knowledge, but time and chance happen to them all." And we live in a fallen world, so things don't always work out. You could be the best qualified person and not get the job because your interviewer had a bad lunch. You know, things happen. You could have an amazing plan for getting in shape, and you started it, and you're taking steps, and you're progressing, and then you sprain your ankle. You could have managed your schedule so you know you have exactly the amount of time you need to get your job done, to get your work done, and then a friend shows up needing your help. Maybe you're running late for a meeting and then a deer runs out in front of your car, like the teaser video. Do you mind? I've got a plan here. What's going on? Well, life happens. Here's another scenario in Acts 16, verses 6 through 10. It says, Paul and his companions traveled throughout the region of Phrygia and Galatia, having been kept by the Holy Spirit from preaching the word in the province of Asia. And FYI, Asia didn't refer to the continent, it referred to a region of the modern country of Turkey. That's when you read Asia in the Bible, that's what it's referring to. Verse 7, when they came to the border of Mysia, they tried to enter Bithynia, but the Spirit of Jesus would not allow them to. So they passed by Mysia and went down to Troas. During the night, Paul had a vision of a man of Macedonia standing and begging him, "Come over to Macedonia and help us." After Paul had seen the vision, we got ready at once to leave for Macedonia, concluding that God had called us to preach the gospel to them. So Paul and his travel buddies had a plan. We're going to go wherever we can and share the gospel of Jesus with people. That's a great plan. And I'm sure they prayed all about it. I'm sure Paul's companions and the church in Antioch had sent them on this journey. I'm sure they all agreed with this plan, so there was good counsel there. But God himself closed the door on them 2 times in a row. Can you imagine Paul's thoughts? Now, this wasn't like a day trip. The regions he was going to took like days to travel from one to another. And just imagine Paul's thoughts. You know, God, I thought this was the plan. Like, how could you not be for this? What I'm trying to do here. Why isn't this working? Why are you blocking me? Do you mind? I'm sure some of us have felt like that at times in our own life. But then God revealed a new plan to Paul. He said, basically, hey, do what you're doing, just do it over in Macedonia instead. So if Paul would have kept a death grip on his original plan, or if he would have moaned and wailed about his plan not working out, we probably wouldn't have the book of Philippians today, because Macedonia is a region, the city of Philippi was in that region. So Paul went over there, preached the gospel to the people in Philippi. 10 years later, he wrote the book of Philippians. So God knew what he was doing with this all along, even though Paul was clueless about why he didn't want him to go over here. He wanted to go over here instead. Sooner or later, our plans will be interrupted. Maybe by time and chance, maybe by tragedy, other people's stupid choices, spiritual warfare, basically anything having to do with living in a fallen world. Or they might be interrupted by redirection or by opportunities from God. Either way, change is inevitable. But if we make plans with prayer and counsel, if we take steps toward those plans, if we hold on to them loosely, being ready to adjust and come up with a new plan if we need to, we're going to have our best chances of minimizing our anxiety about what's next in life, in all kinds of different areas, all kinds of different seasons of life. And that's because the plans of the diligent lead to profit as surely as haste leads to poverty. So I'm going to give you guys a few minutes to process this in community. If you haven't been here for that before, just find one or two other people, it doesn't matter who it is, and we're going to put some discussion questions up here. Take a few minutes to answer those. We're going to end that time by doing the everything drama that we did at the parents banquet, for those of you who missed it there. And then we'll come back up with our worship and response time. But those questions, what approaching change or transition are you most concerned about? What other area of your life is in the greatest need of a plan right now? Besides that biggest concern, what's another area that needs a plan? Which of the 3 steps is usually most challenging for you and why? The plan with parent council, taking the steps, or holding that plan loosely. Let's go ahead and find one or two other people.